Hello and welcome to Comic Boom, the comics and education podcast. If you're interested in hearing more about the crossover between comics and education, then this is the podcast for you. My name is Lucy Starbuck-Bradley, and each week I'll be joined by a fellow educator, an academic, a librarian or a creator of comics to discuss their journey into comics and provide some inspiration to influence your practice, and hopefully shine some light on some titles you can bring into your libraries, classrooms, and maybe onto your bookshelves at home too. This episode of Comic Boom is sponsored by ALCS, the Authors Licensing and Collecting Society. Now, this episode, I'm very delighted to bring back one of my favourite cartoonists, Neill Cameron. You will know Neill Cameron from his previous episode. If you go right back, way back when to the start of Comic Boom, you can find an introductory episode of Neill Cameron. And you'll also, of course, know him from his excellent body of work. He is a regular cartoonist for the Phoenix comic. He produces the Mega Robo Bros series, one of my all-time favourites, middle grade reader series. And of course now he is also the creator of the hugely popular Donut Squad. And we're going to talk about how his career has evolved since the last time he joined us on the podcast. He was just about wrapping up the last of Mega Robo Bros series, a long-running series that he had invested a lot of his life into. And since then, Donut Squad has happened. Things have taken off, and it's just a really interesting time to talk to him. And this interview actually originally took place for Books for Keeps. Books for Keeps is an online free magazine about children's literature, really high quality articles in there, your favourite authors, some new authors that you may not have heard of before, articles really getting under the skin and analysing children's literature, some really important content exploring representation in children's literature. So I really recommend checking out Books for Keeps. I'll put the link to that in the show notes too. I did also want to say, welcome back. Sorry it's been so long since our previous episode. I had some work done on my house. It took a long time to get sorted out, and it wasn't conducive to producing a podcast, so I'm delighted to be back. I've got a series of 5 episodes coming up with some really interesting guests, so your Comic Boom fix will be here for the next few weeks, for the next month or so, and then we'll get back into a more even keel in terms of producing the episodes. So thank you so much for your patience. But that's all of it from me for now. I'll come back at the end of the episode, as I always do, with a bit of a roundup. But for now, here's what Neill has to say. Hello, Neill. Welcome to Comic Boom.
Hello.
It is so lovely to have you back on. You were one of our first few guests that we had on the podcast. It's brilliant to have you back to talk about what's going on with you now.
Very honoured to be back, yeah. Returning guest.
It's a very privileged position. You're one of the few. To start us off, as anyone who wants to listen to a little bit more wider about your background and things we talked about last time, I'll put a link in the show notes for people to go back and listen to that episode. But I thought we could talk a little bit more generally about what comics you're loving at the moment, what you're seeing out there that's really exciting you and inspiring you as a creator and a reader, I suppose.
That is a great question. I have been just recently, since Thought Bubble, in fact, sort of trying to force myself to, this sounds bad, but trying to force myself to read comics again, because I had sort of fallen out of the habit a bit, because I don't want to whine, but I work really hard lately. Like I've been putting a lot of hours at the drawing board, and there's not much time for anything afterwards. And something about spending literally all day and night drawing comics is that when you do clock off, you don't necessarily want to read a comic. That's not.
Yeah.
Maybe
sick of the sight of them, is what you're saying.
Sick of the absolute. This is very off message, isn't it? I'm very off brand right now. Because I do love comics, but you get so sort of lost in your own little world, don't you?
Yeah. So what did you find at Thought Bubble?
Well, I went to Thought Bubble and I did an event in Brussels that was organised by the Comic Art Fest, where I discovered some fantastic Belgian comics artists whose work I do not know, but more excitingly for me, I discovered a bunch of British comics artists who were there with me. It was a group of us went over together, whose work I was not that familiar with, and it was really cool and exciting too. And it was just like, oh yeah, the wider comics community. I think partly it's I work so hard I don't have a lot of time to read comics, and partly, I don't know, like I know so many comics creators now, and just in terms of the Phoenix, and sort of that's a lot of comics to read already. And so it's like, remember,
but the kind of comic art side is a much broader range, not just children's comics. But
there's a much bigger world out there than just the Phoenix, even within the world of children's comics. But there's whole other worlds beyond that, and so it's been a good reminder for me, I suppose, of that, because, like I say, you can get a bit sort of just head down, just sort of focused on your little corner of the world, and it's a much bigger world than that.
And are there any particular titles that you want to give a shout out to? Just that, because I'm sure lots of people listening also get in that kind of rut, and it's just nice to hear a couple of titles or something that they think, oh, well, maybe that's
for sure. Like within the sort of roughly the same kind of age range as the work that I do, or this kind of, within the sort of appropriate for children range. I just recently read Go Man by Hamish Steele, which is just my favourite comic I've read in absolutely years. I thought it was stunningly good, and it's everything I love in comics.
I have not read it yet.
Oh my God, you got to read it.
I'm going to talk quietly because I have bought it for someone's Christmas present, so it is in my house. And as soon as I've given it to them, I'm going to tear it out of their hands.
Well, that is a great question. No, I loved it. It's so funny, and just it's so emotional and so intelligent and so thoughtful, and it reminded me how much fun like superheroes are, and how much fun like adventure storytelling is, because it's all of that, but just boiled down to this one beautifully executed and just really brilliantly done graphic novel, which is the first of a series, I believe. So that's incredibly exciting as well. Yeah, it's the sort of thing we just need lots more of, frankly, and so I loved that. Also, in that roughly same sort of age range, I'm sure you've talked about this one probably on the podcast before, but Boss of the Underworld by Tor Freeman is an absolute...
we haven't spoken about it on the podcast actually, but that's a great book.
It's fantastic. It's so funny. It's just so mad and inventive and cool. And
I find that the Tor's humour it kind of sneaks up on you, and there's some things in it just make me laugh so hard completely out of nowhere. But I don't know, I can't really explain it, but it's just a really dry sense of humour that just really, really amuses me.
And I think in both of those cases, they're the best kind of kids comics, you'd hope they are hugely fun to read as an adult, and very funny, and they work for everyone, I think. And in the out with the realm of children's comics, I think that maybe my favourite thing I bought at Thought Bubble, and I've read since, it's just a very short comic called 5 More Minutes by Hannah Berry, which is I don't even want to sort of give a it's so short and it's so fleeting. I don't even want to sort of tell you what it's about, because any kind of description would almost ruin it. But it's I guess it's about parenting and
it's
anxiety.
Something to go and investigate and for people to find out.
Yeah, for sure. I hugely recommend that.
Great. And Hannah Berry's been on the podcast before, and she's brilliant. So one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, just I guess to set the scene and think about your origin story, is, and we're entering the National Year of Reading, which is dedicated to promote reading for pleasure and lots of different types of reading. And there has been, I feel, like a growing conversation since the last time we came on the podcast about comics and their importance, and there's been a lot more discussion around that. I just wondered, from your perspective, thinking back, what is it about comics that really spoke to you as a child and carried you into that, the career that you have now, from a view of thinking about the children there now who might be in the same position?
It's a really good question, and I don't know, like, weirdly, I've maybe never really thought about it. Like I've always known and acknowledged the huge impact that comics had on me, and sort of that they made me a reader, basically. But I'd never really thought about why, because it's just because comics are awesome. Like that's But beyond that, I suppose it is just like, I do make a living now, and have for quite some time, as a cartoonist and as an illustrator. And that suggests to me that I do have quite a visual sort of way of learning, or way of thinking, and sort of way of processing information. And so I think it was just because it's pictures, like I was always just fascinated by the drawings, and they're cool and exciting, and they just grab you straight away. And we see that all the time with kids, coming to read through comics. We see that all the time with kids with dyslexia coming to read through comics. Is the appeal of the image sort of helps ease you in. It's just so fun and engaging. It gives you so much straight away, even if the words are still a bit of a challenge for you. that it motivates you to read rather than making reading seem in any way off-putting or sort of challenging, because it's giving you so much while leading you in.
Yeah, it's got that sort of scaffold around it, that the images kind of scaffold the meaning of the words, but also it's kind of greater than some of its parts, isn't it?
Yeah, completely, yeah.
There's so much depth there as well. I think it was Nick Susanis, who's an American professor and comics creator, said that really stuck with me is that they're actually very complex comics, but they're also very accessible, and you can have great depth within them, but still have a huge range of people who can access that depth, which I think is really true.
Yeah, no, completely. I think that's completely true. And, you know, there's studies which someone like Mark Bradley would be better placed to quote than I am, because I can never remember this kind of stuff, about what's happening in the brain when you read a comic and the complexity that's going on, and the fact you're using all these different parts of your brain, because you're processing sort of all these streams at the same time, you know, the visual stream and the text stream, and you can do really fun and you know, that's the joy of comics, is that the ways that you can play with that and sort of make them work together or make them work against each other, and that's what gives it such richness medium. But just in terms of its initial appeal and why it's so appealing to kids in particular, I think, is just because, like, pictures are cool. Like, just I have quite a visual brain, I think, but like, I think like lots of people do, and certainly kids do. Like, kids love drawing, kids love making pictures, kids love looking at pictures, kids love, you know, that's just a huge part of sort of how you're engaging with the world at that age. And so storytelling medium that is, you know, that sort of picture books plus is you know, intrinsically incredibly appealing to kids, I think.
Yeah, completely agree.
Because it's so intrinsically appealing to kids, and because it's pictures, that does mean, I think, that sometimes people do see it as simplistic, or as, you know, just for struggling readers or just for beginning readers. And I think everything you were saying about the complexity that's possible and the richness of the form, I think, is completely true. And that's what we who love comics know, but maybe we need to sort of communicate more to people who don't have that message yet, you know. and the secret's getting out, I think. Like, more and more people are recognizing this. I think we've come a long way in the time since we last talked, probably. But,
yeah, I think so too.
But there's still work to be done.
Shall we talk more specifically about one thing that's been very big since the last time we spoke is Donut Squad, which have been hugely popular, very successful. The book's been very successful, the strips as well. Before that, mentioned on the Guardian sort of roundup of the best children's books, which is amazing to see. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the series, how it came about, for anyone who hasn't managed to see it yet?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm trying to remember if I was even doing it, like, when we talked last.
I don't think you were. I think we were in the lead up to the last Mega Robo Bros book.
Yeah.
At that
so
point.
so I might have, like, they would have been round about that time that I started doing it, and because I think the way I've come to see it now, and the way I've sort of tell it to people, is that doing the last Mega Robo Bros book was sort of quite stressful and difficult and a lot of pressure, and I think all that pressure did something strange to my brain, and sort of as a release valve for that pressure, I started drawing these just very deeply stupid little 4-panel gag strips about donuts. So what the strip is, it's 4-panel little gag strips about donuts who, insofar as there's a plot, they want to be popular and beloved and take over the world. But mostly it's just, I find it quite hard to describe. It's just whatever weird ideas pop into my head, but just with donut. It goes to a lot of places. Like, it covers. There's quite a range.
It does have a kind of overarching narrative. As it's progressed, it's developed a bit more of a characters and a range of characters and a narrative. Is that just something that you've kind of just been drawn into as you've done more of it? You've kind of started linking them a little bit more, or?
Oh yeah, no, that's happened naturally, and that's because I just can't help myself. Apparently, you know, like, as I say, it was supposed to be my fun little release valve from doing these big, complicated narratives that had sort of worn me out a bit. And now, I mean, we're at the point now where, like, the story we just finished in the Phoenix, the Donut Squad story, is by far the most complicated ludicrously overcomplicated thing I've ever done in my life. It was such hard work.
You literally cannot help yourself.
No, and so it just happens naturally, doesn't it? You do a strip, and then think, oh, I could build on that, and then I think I know how to build it. Just in terms of jokes, like I know what the next version of that gag is, or I know how I can build on that. I think this would be funny. And then before you know it, you've constructed these giant, elaborate...
I'm imagining a kind of complex board with bits of string connecting different donuts to different points in the narrative to keep you on track.
Yeah, I mean, this last one that we just finished, there were spreadsheets, there were schedules, there were diagrams, there was a lot going on. Yeah.
So there's one book out, and then in the new year, the second.
The next one's out in January, and then, I mean, I think that the plan is for 2 a year, but we'll see how long I can sustain that rate before going completely strange. Yeah.
Yeah, because obviously Mega Robo Rose was a really long-running and very complex and beautiful series. And I know that, when we spoke before, you said that you had the kind of a long-term vision, maybe not minutely planned out, but you sort of knew the shape of that story from the start. Is this is being approached in a similar way, or, as in have you got more of a plan? I'm sort of sensing no.
No, not at all. Not at all. Goodness knows, honestly. Like, Donut Squad was never really supposed to exist. It was certainly not supposed to be like my next big project. As I say, I just I had this weird little idea, and I thought, yeah, four fun little gag strips. I can draw a few of those. That'll be some nice light relief to take the pressure off from all the sort of epic, intense, emotional drama I've been drawing lately. And I drew just roughs of maybe 6 or so strips, just sort of getting it down, figuring out what it was. And I found it funny, but I was like, this is probably something for me to maybe do if I've got spare time and post to Instagram and keep up for a week or two, and then run out of time and get distracted and get back to real work, because I don't think it fits in the Phoenix. I think it's a bit too weird. It's not really...
Yeah.
It turns out I massively underestimated the weirdness tolerance levels of the Phoenix.
Yeah, and
which in hindsight, what was I thinking? But I did send the roughs I did to my editor Joe, because I thought, well, he's going to find it funny, and he'll. I don't think it's for the Phoenix, but just on the off chance it is, it'd be nice to get paid. So that's the joy of being published in a comic and not just me posting things to Instagram. You get paid. So I thought I'd send it to Joe because he'd find it funny at least. And yeah, he was like, yeah, how soon can you finish these? Do you want to just do it? Just keep doing them. Keep sending them in. And so, yeah, it has taken on a bit of a life of its own. And so then I was like, okay, I'll do this for a while I figure out what my next big project is. This is a fun little way to sort of, keep the lights on. Mega Robo Rose was such a big thing, and it was such a sort of huge part of my life, honestly, and sort of part of my creative life. That sort of when that came to an end, I was sort of looking around again. What do I do next? What's the next big story? Because that was my big story, and it took me 10 years to tell. The prospect of starting another one, if it's going to potentially take 10 years, is quite intimidating. And how many of those have I got left in me? And so it puts this pressure onto it that it's got to be the right choice. I don't know, I was kind of stalling under that pressure. And so I thought, I'll do this while I figure all that out. And it turns out, no, this is now the next big thing.
You're now the donut guy.
I'm now the donut guy. Yeah. It's completely taken over. I think it's fair to say it's just instantly eclipsed Mega Robo Rose in terms of popularity by quite some margin, which I'm mad about, frankly. But no, to go back to your original question, no, it's sort of the complete opposite. Mega Robo Rose, I had a plan. It was a story. I knew, if not the specifics of the story beats, I knew the emotional shape of it and the emotions I wanted to end on. And I had that in sort of sight from the very beginning. This is I'm just making it up as I go along. And I think that's done me a power of good, because it's not working to a plan. It is just sort of coming up with jokes and then building jokes on top of jokes, and seeing where it takes you. And I think that is a completely different way of working, but it's really fun, and it opens you up to discoveries along the way in a way that you can't if you're sort of locked into a plan, you know.
Yeah.
Like the whole thing with the bagels was never supposed to happen. That was a like a punchline, one of my few punchlines I've done that got like rejected, or I was asked to come up with an alternative because it was deemed a bit too controversial, or occasionally I pushed the line a bit too far, and so I had a punchline and I was asked to go away and think about another punchline, and so for that I came up with and maybe something bagels, and then the bagels took on a life of their own. And then they entered into an elaborate war and series of escalating schemes against the donuts. And now we are where we are. And I've done like 4 books worth of material for these guys already. And it's just taken on ludicrous proportions.
Do you think part of the appeal is also it's quite accessible in terms of the fans being able to engage and do their own drawings of donuts or creating their own characters? It's kind of it's such a stretchy world that it's got space for your own kind of ideas as a reader as well.
Oh yeah, completely. Because donuts are quite easy to draw. It's sort of the joy of it, and so they're very inviting to have a go at drawing your own. And we do the thing in the books of like showing you how to draw the characters and encouraging you to have a go at making up your own. But you don't even need to do that and encourage people, because they will just, the amount of like, look, here are my donuts I've created that we get in the post is wild. And because I think that's a really good lesson that I maybe hadn't intuited earlier, when I thought that, like, when I was a kid and I loved comics, I loved sort of, your simpler, cartoonier, ostensibly simpler, cartoonier styles like Snoopy, Charlie Brown, Garfield, Calvin and Hobbes, of course. But I also really, really loved the sort of more, inverted commas, realistic, sort of the more action-oriented stuff, Transformers and into 2080. The art that makes you go like, whoa! Like,
wow, how do they do that with all the perspective and
yeah. So I thought I always really responded to that. Whoa, look at this art kind of aspect of comics, and that is a cool and important and valid aspect of comics. But almost more important, particularly at this age range, is like, I could do that. Like, so you're not intimidating readers with how great you are at drawing. You're inviting them in by making it feel like they could do it too, and that's a really important part of how kids engage with comics, which I should have known, because that's how I got started. But like, you read the comic you like and then you have a go at drawing your version of it, or drawing those characters and then making up your own new ones. And like, that's quite hard when they're ludicrously complicated robots that take 4 hours to draw, but it's a lot easier when they're little round donuts. It just invites a lot more people in.
In terms of like the longer term picture, have you got other ideas that you want to kind of explore, any kernels of other projects, or is it very much that this has kind of grown to take over your capacity for thinking about other things at the moment?
I mean, certainly for the last 6 months or so, this just completely took over everything, and it's been really fun. Like, I've been able to do things and then sort of push the limits of it in ways that have been hugely fun and creatively challenging to me. And so I've not minded the fact that it's taken over everything. Having laboured for years hoping people would read my comics, and then Donut Squad has, taken off in ways I could never have imagined. It would be churlish not to enjoy the fact that people are now reading my comics. And so it's very exciting, and I'm happy to try and surf this wave and make the most of this moment, and sort of just, people want donuts, I'll give them donuts. I'll give them so many donuts they'll regret ever asking. But I also, yes, I definitely think I'm starting to feel the call of maybe write something that isn't about donuts also. Maybe there are other stories I'd like to tell, or just other things I'd like to draw as an artist, beyond just small round guys pulling funny faces, much as I love that. But just as a creator, I think I'm already starting to feel that I miss the, oh, wow, cool, look at this sort of side of things. I miss sort of big, crazy action scenes and, huge perspective shots and mad imagery that, spreads across 2 whole pages, and just I love all that stuff, and that's.
Do you ever feel the fear when you're doing stuff like that? Do you ever have ideas that you're not sure you can draw, or are you at the stage where you're just confident that you can draw most things you think up now?
That's a really good question. I think because I have sort of quite a visually brain, I sort of think by drawing, and so I'm not sure I could have a thought that I couldn't sort of think how to draw. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if you're a writer who's writing comics for other people, that's maybe a problem. But like, I'm if in a way, I'm limited as a writer by the fact that I can only have ideas I could draw.
Yeah, something that I'm really interested in is that kind of interplay between drawing and writing, and how children begin communication on paper through drawing and then evolves to writing. I mean, you almost cut the ties between those two, because in the early years, children are kind of switching in between thinking in pictures, drawing in pictures, writing in words, and that's all kind of merged together as a single form of communication that we move children away from as they go through the school system. And it's something I've been thinking about a lot recently.
Yeah, it's madness. Like it's such a natural part of how we come to writing, and why do we think that should then be put away? Why don't we just develop and encourage that? Why don't we acknowledge that using words and pictures together is more powerful and potentially more complicated, but also more natural to how our brains work,
and how we predominantly communicate, like in terms of thinking about social media, advertising, all sorts of different, like it's generally words and images together that we're surrounded by now, much more than technology has allowed that.
Completely. I think acknowledging the increasing sort of primacy of visual literacy and how you tie that together with teaching literacy skills is a real challenge for the next 10, 20 years. Picture's good, to sum up.
Yeah, picture's good. Word's good as well.
Word's fine.
That's good. If you're a donut, what donut would you be? Or which donut do you most identify with out of your donut creations you could do?
Oh, well, there is one little donut who he doesn't appear very much, but he will appear in like the background of a particularly sort of complicated giant double-page spread, or one of these ones where I've drawn like all the characters and all the bagels having a giant fight or something. There is a little Neill donut. There's a little donut with...
Is there? Well, that's cheating. You can't say, if I was a donut, I'd be the one that I drew in my likeness.
Well, no, because he's always there in the corner of a big, complicated double-page spread, holding a pen and looking really tired. And so I do identify with him.
A tired, slumping donut.
The kids do ask sort of who my favourite donut is quite a lot these days, and the answer I give them is that I think Anxiety Donut is my favourite character, partly because he's just one of the few ones who can actually speak in like complete sentences and not just turn up and yell his own catchphrase, which is very helpful as a writer if you're trying to hang a plot of someone. To have the ability to speak in complete sentences is useful. But also because he suffers from anxiety. He's really stressed out a lot of the time. He finds a lot of life very difficult and stressful, but he always turns up and does the thing anyway, even though it is causing him to freak out beforehand. And I think that is quite admirable and quite relatable. And so I suppose Anxiety Donut is the donut I feel the most kinship with. And I hope that comes across. And I think, there was some nervousness maybe from editors at first, that it was like the joke was we are laughing at people who suffer from anxiety, and that we are laughing at kids who experience anxiety. And I hope it is clear that is not certainly not the intention of that joke, or if it is, it's like, if it's a joke from the inside out,
Yeah. One of the things that's so great about Mega Robo Bros is, I always say this whenever I'm pitching that everyone should read Mega Robo Bros, because it's always, whenever I'm asked, I'm always like, it's my favourites, is that anything that's about robots is really about humanity, isn't it? And what it means to be human. And I feel like that the donuts are becoming that. It didn't take long before it was an allegory of our times.
Any story about donut is really about humans.
Humanity, yeah. Exactly. I'd love to hear, so you've got January, you're starting the year strong with a book straight away.
Yep.
What's the rest of your year gonna pan out like? Any big other moment?
Yeah, there's a lot of festivals and stuff booked in. I'm pretty much booked solid through 2026 now already.
Amazing.
Which is cool, but also slightly alarming, because we're trying to do it in a slightly more organised way this year, because I said yes to too much stuff this year, because sort of things come up in a very ad hoc way and you're like, oh yeah, that sounds fun. Oh yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, that we should do that one. And so I say yes to a lot of things, and then I go 2.5 months without having a single day off, like sort of every weekend, working all through the weekend, doing events or working on the way back from events. It's that's not good for
It's not sustainable, is
people.
it?
It's not sustainable. No, exactly.
No.
So that's why we're trying to take a slightly more joined up approach next year and consider what are the things that would be cool to do, but also what is a amount of work that one human being should try and do.
Yeah.
So, and we were going through, but it's hard because I kind of don't like having stuff planned in that much. I'm not a natural planner in that way. I was talking to someone at the Story Museum where I do the monthly comics club, and we were, because all this other stuff in the calendar, I had to make sure we had dates for comics club sort of amongst all that.
Yeah.
And so we were going through and blocking out dates for that, and we got as far as December 2026. And she said to me, do you want to carry on into 2027? And I was like, no, I can't. I can't mentally and emotionally have dates in the calendar for January 2027, because that just feels like that feels very scary to me. And like, the second I book things in for January 2027, I'm going to walk out the front door and get hit by a bus. It's just obvious to me that that's what would happen. Why can't other people see that? What was your question? Fun things coming up.
What have you got on? Yeah.
So Donut Squad every week forever. Then we've got, so the next Donut Squad book will be out later in the year, book 3, which is a big, weird, mad, convoluted time travel story.
So that's already been created and is done in the bank.
It's all material that exists from the Phoenix, but like the job of then converting it into a book is not done.
Do you do that, or does somebody else do that?
We've got people at Phoenix and DFB sort of helping out on that now, because that one should be relatively easy. The trouble is that, like, Donut Squad in theory is very easy to convert from Phoenix to a book, much more so than some of the other stuff we do, because it's 4-panel gag strips. So you just change it from being like 1x4 grid to being a 2x2 grid, and it's a page of comics. Unfortunately, we then do all these things with characters escaping out of the panel borders and going on a little adventure through other strips in the Phoenix, and all these meta shenanigans, which then become impossible to do in book form, because you're literally playing on all the structure and format of the weekly comic in a way that's so fun to do and so exciting, I think, for readers of that weekly comic who know that structure so well, and that's the joy of it. But then trying to make that stuff work as a book where those rhythms and structure literally do not exist. And so you have to sort of come up with alternate versions and sort of new concepts that will be as fun and playful and exciting, hopefully, in book context as those things were in the Phoenix context, which is really good. And what we've done in book 2, I'm so delighted with what we've done, and I can't wait for people to read it. But it's quite challenging. It's a little bit challenging. So book 3 and book 4 of Donut Squad, the comics exist, but turning them into books is the challenge. But then in October, the plan is we've got a new edition of How to Make Awesome Comics coming out. A new sort of version of that book, which is a book I did years ago, which was in the sort of very early days of the Phoenix, which is a book, as the name suggests, it's a book about how to make comics for kids who read comics. And so we're doing a new version. It's been sort of reformatted, and I've taken the opportunity to sort of just polish it up a bit, because
are there learnings from your comics club that have gone into that kind of refresh?
Completely. Because that's the thing. Like, I made this series and then book about how to make awesome comics when I really hadn't made that many comics, and I'd done maybe like one workshop with some kids once, And so in retrospect, the kind of sheer hubris of thinking, let's make a book telling kids how to make comics is sort of amazing to me. I'm impressed with younger Neill for having the chutzpah to do that. I have now since spent 15 years making comics and working with kids, like helping them make comics a lot. And so there were a few things I was like, yeah, I just think I know a slightly better way to communicate at this point now. Or I've been sort of physically restrained and sort of wrestled back from doing a complete page one rewrite, which is maybe sort of what my instincts were. Because people are like, no, there's actually a lot of good in this book. You don't need to. I think we all feel a bit weird about stuff we drew years ago, and like I always have that impulse to, I'll just start from scratch, it'll be easier. But no, so we've tuned it up and polished it up and applied the knowledge of Lothie's past many years, but it is fundamentally the same book because there was actually some quite good stuff in there. I'm reluctantly forced to admit. One thing that I'm very excited, I'm going to be going over to Japan to do some sort of comics workshops in schools with the organisers of the Comic Art Festival in the Lakes, who were the guys who organised the Brussels trip I went on this year. So I'm very excited about that. That's a bit of a lifelong dream come true.
That's really exciting. Have you ever been to Japan before?
I have, yeah, but like not for a long, long time. And the thought of being able to go there and do my job is really exciting to me. Like, I like visiting places, but I really like visiting places and working with kids, and sort of doing my job and drawing things, and communicating and sharing ideas, and making comics with people, and getting to do that over in Japan is just that's so exciting to me. I can't wait.
Yeah, that's really exciting. The Lakes International Comics Art Festival and what they do is just, it's really cool.
It's amazing. They do so much, and they do so much that I don't think people even know about and that they don't shout about that much, but they're amazing.
Yeah, lots of their kind of work that goes on outside of the festival, that kind of outreach work. I'm involved in they're doing a project, Comics Potential 2, which is about improving teacher knowledge of comics and working with like Initial Teacher Training University to get some like input around using comics in education in the teacher training right from the start of people's career.
Oh, I love that.
It's really cool. Yeah.
Get them young, project. Get the teachers young. That's what we need to do, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's something that's happening across next year as well. And then there's the Phoenix Fest in the spring. So you had one at Lakes this year.
This year's was like a mini Phoenix Fest. It was the Lakes basically, but there was a sort of Phoenix encampment at the Lakes. So it was lovely, but it was quite, compared to the Phoenix Fest the year before in Oxford, which was wild. The Lakes one was quite small and chill and like lovely. But so for this year, it's back in Oxford, and it's going to be, by all accounts, like even wilder. It's going to be huge. It's sort of taking over half of Oxford city centre. So it's going to be like across multiple venues and sort of lots of different events happening. Because the trouble with Phoenix Fest since its inception has been that they plan the biggest thing they can possibly do, and then they tell people about it, and then it sells out in 5 minutes, and everyone gets mad at it.
It's like Glastonbury. Yeah.
yeah. So they're trying to sort of expand capacity and make sure as many people can be a part of it as possible. Probably still sell out in 5 minutes, and people will be mad at us. But what can you do?
Victim of your own success. That's the problem.
That's always going to happen. Yeah. The other big thing, I guess, that I'm working on, and that I think will be a big part of next year, is a collaboration. It's the comic that I make with my son that we do for the Phoenix now, called The Villainous, which is like a comic he's been making since he was 8 or 9, and has now ended up, through a long and convoluted sort of series of unlikely events, becoming my job to draw my son's weird comics. But because he's 18 now, and he may not be just sitting around living in my house free to write comics for me forever. So we're sort of wanting to make the most of that while we've got him here, and get as much Villainous drawn as we can. Because as a weird thing that's come about by accident, we're now just all loving it and all really excited about it, and talking about maybe putting together books of it. And it's
cool.
It's really exciting, and it's such a fun thing to make for lots of reasons, because I get to draw spaceships and explosions, but also it's still in that sort of quite silly, funny milieu. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. But also it's just I get to make a thing with my kid, and we get to I've engineered a situation whereby my teenage son still wants to talk to me because we can just talk about aliens and explosions and stuff, and somehow we
That's
can still
great.
communicate that way.
Perfect.
It's very delightful to me.
And is it something that he's interested in doing in his sort of like future life, or is it like just a side project for him?
I mean, I wouldn't want to speak for him, but I will. He's not very he's not a very practically minded young man in some ways, and he's not very good at thinking about the future in realistic and sort of career focused ways, maybe. But he just is a writer. He just like I find he writes just all the time, and if we're not capturing it and sort of bottling it and making comics out of it this way, he's just going to be writing long, complex novel cycles that no one else will ever actually read. And so I think one way or another he will end up being a writer, and I don't know what sort of shape or form that might take. But I'm enjoying sort of riding his coattails while I can still grab onto them.
Yeah, that's amazing. What a great thing to do together. Very cool.
I think people who don't work for Weekly Comic have more exciting answers to the question, like, what are you doing next year? It's like they'll have one or two big exciting new projects, but what I'm doing is drawing the Phoenix every week.
Week in, week out, yeah.
Which is great from a sort of regularity of work point of view, and great from a creative point of view, but not a very exciting answer to the question. So what have you got coming up? Like, the Phoenix.
And do you find is the pressure good, the pressure of producing weekly good for you?
Oh, I think it's great for me. I think, like, I've been doing it for however long the Phoenix has been around now, which is like 14 years or so. And if anything, I'm more doubled down at this point. I'm like, no, I'm every week. I used to sort of draw things and then go away for a bit and then draw some more things and then go away for a bit. But now, like, it's literally every week. And I think it's great for me because I think, like, before I had the need to be this disciplined, I would really struggle sort of committing to an idea, or struggle with finishing things, and sort of you'd get a few pages in and they go, I don't know, I'm not feeling this, or I think I've had a much better idea of how I could do this, and I'm going to go away and sort of start again and redraw, and sort of great grand visions and plans and ambitions that never maybe anyone actually got to read because I only ever got 4 pages into them before fizzling out. And when you have a weekly deadline and you have to finish things and you have no choice about that, it means you do finish things. And I think that's one of the best things you can do as a creator. And I'm always telling this to young people who are starting out, is to finish things and let people read them,
Yeah, don't overthink.
Don't overthink, and don't go too mad with your vision for what the scale of this thing, like, tell a story in a form and at a scale that you can achieve and finish. Don't necessarily dive straight in with your 20-volume manga-inspired graphic novel cycle, because there's a very good chance that by the time you get to even finishing the first book of that, you will have completely changed your style and tastes and what you want to do. So maybe just start with a short story. Start with a 4-panel gag strip, and then see what that prompts you to, and sort of let things build more organically that way, But I think actually finishing things gives you a sense of achievement and self-belief, and letting people read them reinforces that. And that can be really helpful, because you come to sort of trust yourself and believe in yourself as an artist in a way that if it's just you in a room and you're working on a great big thing but you never actually finish it, that doesn't do a lot for your self-belief. That can be quite damaging to your self-belief, So I think start small and build up is a good rule of thumb, and I feel very lucky to have that weekly deadline because it sort of enforces that,
Okay, well, look at you, got all profound right at the end there.
Yeah. There we go. Say, work that in. Make that sound like it came out of what we were just talking about.
Put that at the top.
Straight off the dome, yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. It's been great. We normally do, at the end of the podcast, if we were to add one book to our to-be-read pile in comic, what comic would you recommend that we went away and read? You've already given some recommendations at the top. Do you want to repeat one of those, or do you want to go for something new and different to end the podcast?
Struggle to think of a better recommendation than Go Man. Honestly, I'm Team Go Man. I love it to bits. if I was to recommend something like...
It's really stylish too. Like, I love the style of the drawing. It's really cool.
Just so cool. Just on a style level, on a just sheer technical skill level, it's stunning. Like, he's an incredibly good artist in all the ways, you know. Like, some people have a beautiful style, but like, and that carries you past the fact that the drawing fundamentals aren't, you know. But this he's just rock solid on every front. I love it. It's just a joy. If I was to recommend something completely different that isn't sort of necessarily for the kid, I mean, probably certainly isn't for the kid reading, but there's an artist called Paul Rainey who had a couple of graphic novels out. I think start of this year. It might even be last year. I don't know. I'm not very in tune with things, but he did one called There's No Time Like the Present, and he did one called Why Don't You Love Me, I think it was called. And they're both...
That's the one that I can picture the cover of. I haven't read either, though.
They're really amazing comics, and they both sort of use the form to do just the very surprising things and take you to places sort of emotionally and just in terms of the narrative that you would not see coming in a million years. And both are very, very funny. And I think I like comics that do both, you know. So I would definitely recommend those, maybe more for the grown-ups.
Brilliant. Thank you. That's great. It's great to have some grown-up reading too. Usually as a family go to the lakes and go to the festival, but we didn't go this year. And I kind of missed basically spending an absolute fortune on comics and coming back with a massive stack and exploring loads of new stuff. I kind of missed that injection of new stuff. Yeah,
that's what Thought Bubble does for me, yeah. And that's why Thought Bubble was such a sort of injection of new stuff and of, oh yeah, comics are great. That, you know, it's really important to get out of your own little corner, I think, and read more widely and realise, oh yeah, there's all this different stuff going on. There's so much to be shouted about.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. It's been brilliant chatting to you, as always. Yeah, exciting to see all this donut stuff next year. But it's been brilliant to see the success of that. It's been really nice chatting.
No, it's lovely to talk to you, yeah.
There you have it. Thank you, Neill, for being such a brilliant returning guest. It's been fascinating to hear about how your career's developed since the last time we spoke to you. I've read Go Man now. Christmas has passed, as I'm sure you are aware, and I was able to give that book to my son, which means I could finally read it, and I loved it. Yeah, so really chime in with Neill on his recommendation of Go Man by Hamish Steele. My recommendation, something that I've been reading lately, a YA book that has just won an award in America, the ALA Award, a graphic novel called Raised by Ghosts by Brianna Lowenson. Really beautiful, evocative, nostalgic teen fiction about friends. Actually, it's a bit more of a memoir, I think, than fiction. A poignant snapshot of a moment in time in the 90s. Speaks to me, obviously, as someone who was a teenager in the 90s. Passing notes between friends in high school. The text in the graphic novel appears in the form of notes, either diaries to herself or notes that she's passed to friends. Beautiful, beautiful approach to artwork and some really interesting sequences of pure imagery for you to kind of really get your teeth into and interpret what's going on in Brianna's inner world in the story during this peak time of change in her adolescence. So it's very, very beautifully told and very nostalgic for the 90s YA graphic novel. That's Raised by Ghosts by Brianna Lowenson. So really recommend that, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. That's it from me. Thank you so much for coming back after such a long break and listening to this episode of the podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I felt like I was a bit rusty on that episode, but thank goodness Neill wasn't. Neill's just an absolute delight of a guest to have on. So he saved my rustiness and made it a good episode regardless. You can follow the podcast on Instagram, on Blue Sky, and you can still find us on Twitter at Lucy_Braidley, although I absolutely am not engaging on X anymore. But the podcast is still there under my username on X, but my preference would be for us to meet via different platforms. So I will be posting more on those other platforms that I have mentioned. You can also reach out if you'd like to make a comment or give some feedback. There's an email address in the show notes, and there's also a facility on the comicboom.co.uk website where you can leave a comment based on an episode there as well, and I can access that. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a good week, and we'll be back very shortly with a new episode about Yo Comics, a child-focused comics and zine fair happening in London, and we'll be talking all things how to make your own comics fair. So I think that'll be really interesting and something that could get some exciting activity happening for children and young people wherever you're based. That's all from me for now, though. Thanks for listening.